You're listening to 94.4 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. And we are very fortunate in this show. We've brought you some of the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, trainers, sports psychologists. We've brought you guests from various fields related to sport, but we also have a segment where we interview people in the field of psychology. And we've brought you some of the world's leading names in the field of psychology and related fields who've given us an interesting insight into their perspective and research. And today we bring you a guest, a very special guest, who's going to give us an interesting insight. She's one of the leading people, one of the leading YouTubers in football, and all of us like watching a bit of YouTube. I know I certainly do. We like to watch a roundup of the games, and I'm sure all our listeners will log in and sort of tune in, and there's a good chance you've probably seen her videos before. They're very entertaining, very informative, and very interesting. We're bringing you Nieve Pegg, Stunt Pegg, who is a YouTube extraordinaire. Welcome to the show, Nieve. Great to have you on board.
Oh, it's great to be on. Thank you very much. That was a great introduction.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning, Nieve. What was your motivation to be a YouTuber? Obviously YouTube is a big thing now, and many people sort of do videos, but yourself, what was your sort of motivation behind becoming a YouTuber?
In the beginning, I absolutely adore football. I've got such a passion for it, and I wanted a platform to be able to share my views, share that passion for football. And as I sort of progressed and made a couple of vlogs, I noticed quite a lot of supporters who also love football, have a passion not just from this country, from all across Europe, the world, supporters who maybe watch it from television screens, can't get to matches. They all wanted to get involved and chat about it too. So for me, I just love the idea of building a channel and building sort of community of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who could be from any sort of walk of life, who just love football, have a passion for it, and there's a place for them to talk about it, and videos where they can actually feel like they're a part of it and get a different sort of insight into football on match day and at matches and stuff.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And in terms of yourself, you've been to some of the world's great stadiums and witnessed some really memorable matches. For our listeners, can you share some of the most memorable matches that you've been to?
It's funny because I've had the privilege of going to so many incredible places at such a young age, but the place that I will always remember the most, and the game I will always remember most, is right back just in Bolton with my team, Bolton Wanders. And this is the video that's the most viewed on my channel. It's fast approaching 1 million views. There's thousands of people each month are watching it, even now, 3 years later. And it was Bolton versus Nottingham Forest, the last day of the season. It's my club. We were in a relegation scrap. Nobody thought we could do it. I didn't think we could do it, to be honest. And we got a goal. We conceded a goal. We conceded another goal. And we needed to win this game to stay up. And we got 2 goals in the last few minutes of the game. Aaron Wilbraham scored, who all season he missed quite a few chances. There was a mixed relationship with supporters. And it was him who was the hero on the day. And it was incredible. The emotions were just powerful, and the amount of supporters, it didn't matter who they supported. They could have supported Manchester City or Liverpool, who win Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues. This was special, and you could see how much it meant to supporters. And to me, that's what makes the football match. It's the fans in the ground. It's not always about the football on the pitch, and to bring all those supporters together was just incredible. That's my most memorable match.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I can sense the passion for the game in your voice when you describe that. And Bolton, like Salford, I guess there's a lot of hard-working people who love their football. And at the moment, obviously, it's been a very challenging time over the past year or so with obviously the pandemic and not being able to go to games and various restrictions. And obviously, the clubs prioritise safety and health and safety. Yet all that said and done, it's a huge communal thing. And do you find that the community in Bolton, the football, not just the football community, but the community in general. I mean, just your own perspective, Nieve, what does it mean? What does football mean to the people of Bolton?
Oh, it means so much, and I think it's about, I mean, when we had Ken Anderson, our former owner, who we've got Football Ventures now, a consortium who are brilliant around Britain, but when we had Ken Anderson, and he was stripping the values of the club and the community, I think that made us realise just how much it meant. And I mean, there were games that you look at Bury, and supporters who have been going to matches every single week for all their life, and all of a sudden they can't go, and that was threatened at Bolton as well. That potentially could happen to us, and when that was threatened, everyone just absolutely rallied. On the first game of the season, when we were in League One, we had a minus 12 point deduction for the start of the season. It was at Bolton Wanders away, which is an absolute pain to get to, can I just say, and we knew we were going to lose. We didn't even know who was going to play on the pitch, because all our players had left us, and we just had youngsters, but everyone was there. We sold out the place. We completely sold it out, and we were chanting and chanting and chanting, and I think it was the coming together. And I made a comment on that. I said, we've played Atletico Madrid in Europe before, Red Star Belgrade. We've been in the Premier League with Big Sam. We've had good moments in this century, but for me, I've never felt a coming together like us being in League One, which it is bonkers, but I think that just proves for a club like Bolton, with working class supporters, best friends with everyone in that 90 minutes around them, and to me, I think that proves that with a club like Bolton, it's about the people, and it's about interacting, and that sort of social element.
Absolutely, and I suppose it's been sort of really challenging, no doubt, and so in terms of yourself, have you sort of missed going to the games? Obviously, a lot of people miss going to the games, and some teams have allowed a certain number of spectators according to guidelines to go through there. Obviously, health and safety is a priority, and we can fully appreciate that. But I guess in terms of yourself, you've sort of got your finger on the pulse, and what's it like for the fans in terms of not being able to go to games? The impact it's had on them. Obviously, it's a communal sport, and it's not just the game, is it, Nieve? It's like that Saturday morning where people sort of congregate and go to the stadium, and it's an event. It's a day thing. It's a huge thing in English sport. What are your thoughts in terms of, are you missing going to the live games?
Oh, absolutely. It's been really tough, really, watching it on telly. When it's a club that you go to, I mean, a lot of Premier League clubs, even though the support is brilliant there too, but you are more likely that you might get to a few games per season, whereas if you're at a lower league club, you're going to be there every single week, 2 times a week, and you're going to have a pint before the game, and you're going to have a chat with all the supporters. That's just what it's about. And watching it on the telly, you look at the coverage of the Premier League, and it's different with us. When we watch it on telly, it doesn't feel the same. And a lot about how us as supporters go to games is we get behind the players, and we push them on, we will them on, because it's about that as much as anything at this level of football, in my opinion. So we feel a little bit away from it, and just want to get back in there and support them. I mean, we're in League 2, which is the lowest we've been at for a long time, so we want to be there to be supporting the new manager, the new players, and each other, really. But so it is tough that we can't be there for this new sort of era of the club. Absolutely,
no, and I think that a lot of fans up and down the country sort of share that sentiment. But obviously, it's a difficult time, and decisions have got to be made, and the clubs, no doubt, prioritise the health and safety of sort of fans and players, and it's not been easy. But it's really interesting to see the perspective and what it means, not just from a football perspective, from a social element too, which is really important as well. And speaking of Bolton, a club with strong traditions, it's a great ground. I've actually been involved in a game at the ground with my beloved Pegg many years ago. It's a fantastic ground. Obviously it's changed a bit since then, but Bolton, lot of tradition, and you mentioned there, Atletico and the days of Sam being the manager. And where do you see Bolton going from here, Nieve? You probably know as much as anyone. You got your finger to the pulse. What can we expect from Bolton moving forward?
What? I might have my fingers on the pulse, but I can tell you what's going to happen next week. Never mind next year with Bolton. At the moment, it's been very up and down. I mean, we've had some great results this season. We beat Southend 3-0, and our recent result against Cheltenham 1-0 against them, and it's a great performance. But we lost 6-3 to Port Vale on Saturday the 5th. So I think right now, Ian Ever, he's recently been named manager, been upgraded to manager now from coach. So he's got a lot of responsibility to sort of recover this team and work on these players that he's got. A lot of these players he's brought in from the National League, he's brought in from non-league. A lot of these players are really young players. Some of them are quite old players, and there's just a real bunch at the moment. A lot of them haven't played together before. And I think it's just about gelling them together and Ian trying to find a way to take them forward. I know he talks about wanting to get promoted and he's got high expectations, which I think that's what we want to hear. But at the same time, we have got to be real about it. And we've really dropped, and we can't be thinking about it's a whole past lifetime, the Premier League, and even the Championship is. For us now, it's about sort of consolidating where we are and taking it from there and being patient, I think, because we look at teams like Sunderland, who every single year, I don't know if you saw Sunderland Till I Die, but you can see the owners and the people at the club every single year, this is the year we're going to get promoted, and they're stuck in League One. And so it's not easy, definitely not easy to get out of these leagues. And so for now, I think off the field, continuing this stability, owners that get us, that are part of the community, putting on events, and just having a good spirit at the club for now.
Absolutely. You've sort of raised some really interesting points there, that's for sure. And we all sort of remember the days of Bolton in the Premiership, a really tough team to play against, and obviously the European journey, but obviously a club steeped in tradition and a lot of pedigree as well. But you've made a great point there about teams like Sunderland, and it took Leeds a long time to find their way again and make their way back to the Premier League. There's no team has got a given right, obviously, to play in the Premier League. It takes a lot of work and effort, like they've mentioned there. But do you realistically think, Nieve, that Bolton can maybe one day be in the Premier League again? Is that? I mean, I guess all things are possible,
but so.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that we look at stories like Bournemouth and Burnley and their journeys, Brighton as well. It happens, and I think it's not really about 5-year plans. It's not about planning ahead. I think it's just about working where you are. But Bolton is a big club at the end of the day, and I think it's got great facilities. People want to play there. People want to manage there, and it's always going to be an appealing football club. And therefore, I think I can see us going back to the Premier League in the very distant future, because I think we're big enough, and I think we will financially be able to make it happen. But as we say, we've got to keep our expectations short term at the moment. I mean, especially with things like COVID as well, putting spanners in the works for a lot of clubs at this level in League 1 and 2 financially. It might even be a much longer wait, but the journey will be exciting nonetheless. It'll be a roller coaster.
No, absolutely, and that's really interesting perspective that you make there, and that's just in terms of the analogy, the Brightons, the Bournemouths, the Burnleys of this world, who've sort of managed, and a club like Bolton with the pedigree and history of the club, there's always a chance. But I suppose no club has a divine right. You've got to get out there and get things right on and off the pitch, as you alluded to. Going back to YouTube, I think it's really interesting what you do, and we've seen different YouTubers over the years. You could make a case for you being one of the pioneers of the footballing YouTube world when you started and the channel. I suppose up and down the country there might be young people, or people of any age really, thinking, well, I might start a YouTube channel, maybe not in football, but in other areas as well. There might be some horrified parents thinking, oh no, the child wants a YouTube career, but it's not easy. If anyone's considering going into YouTube, there's probably not many people better placed than you to maybe say some of the challenges that they might face going into it.
Yeah, I think it's quite a tough world on social media nowadays, and I think if you are going into YouTube, especially in football as well, you've got all sorts of different supporters, and there's going to be a lot of disagreement in football, as there is, there always is, and a lot of the time online you'll find many people who can disagree but do it respectfully and kindly, and many people that can't, and you've got to expect that and look out for that. You maybe don't deserve it, but it just comes with it. And another challenge I would say you have to face is showing that you deserve to be a bigger YouTuber and have that audience and keep the audience, because a lot of people go on YouTube and they think, right, I'll do a really clickbait video, I'll make a video and I'll put an exciting title on it, I'll get loads of people to watch it and take it from there and become a big YouTuber. But nowadays there are so many people who want to be a YouTuber, and a lot of people that have got the money and financial backing to get cameras and mics all from the very start of their journey, which wasn't the case many years ago when it started. But nowadays you've got to have that personality and humour and show that you have a passion for what you're doing, and you're not just doing it because you want to be a big rich YouTuber like KSI, but actually it's because you've got a passion for something, a niche for something that you want to share with people, and you've got to really put effort into it and treat it like it is. If it's a hobby, and it's a hobby that you're passionate about, if you want it to be a full-time job, well, it has to be full-time, and you've got to really commit to it.
Absolutely, and I have an analogy in football, and our listeners have probably heard it before, that some people like the idea of being a footballer, some people just love being a footballer, and I think the same applies to many professions, and certainly YouTube, where some people like the idea of thinking, okay, financially and sort of the audience and interaction, but it's been really interesting of you to point out some of the challenges, and social media, like you've mentioned, can be really demanding and can be very even make a point for being debilitating for some people, because obviously the comments and what people put on there and all that sort of stuff is can be very difficult for people to deal with too. But also the hours you put in too, and certainly our audience who's listened to you and watched your videos will certainly make a case for your passion, which shine through in the videos going forward. But what about, say, the travel, obviously it's a little bit different now with the pandemic, but you've traveled to many places and different places in the world and done videos, and what about behind the scenes, the work that you do behind the scenes? How demanding is that, Nieve?
Oh, well, I think it's definitely that travel side of things and behind the scenes has really helped sort of shape me and improve my confidence and everything, because I go back for the Women's World Cup, travelling to France. I remember One Football, which is a football app, and they got in touch and said, do you want to go to the Women's World Cup? And it was very short notice. I went by myself to France, still a teenager, and that was exciting, but getting up at 4 a.m, going to France, finding a way to get from a train station in France to the hotel, which is 2 miles away, without having access to anything, or my mobile phone not working, and then I had a blooming 10 million nosebleeds as well. But just all that travelling, I love it and thrive off it, but it is tiring. And I think something that you said about being a YouTuber and this idea was right. And I think a lot of people, I think if you go into YouTube, you should expect to be in a profession where you put a lot of hard work in, but at the same time there are going to be a lot of people out there that don't even think you put that hard work in and don't see it in that way. So you're going to have to just commit and just enjoy it, because otherwise it will make you feel like, it'll frustrate you. So for me, I love all that travelling. It can be hard work, and editing a video might take me sometimes 12 hours, 2 days maybe, if I really want to focus on it, on a software, and whilst I'm in these countries. And whilst I was doing my A-levels, I wanted to get to football matches, 1-2 football games a week, and so I would travel I remember I travelled to London, and I needed to get back for my college class at 9 a.m. the next day, so I set back off from London back to Manchester at 5 in the morning to make sure I got back, and just went there for that night match. And I did all that, and I did it because I enjoyed doing it. So it was hard work and tiring, but I thrived off it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does it mean to you, Nieve, knowing that you can put, a smile on someone's face somewhere? Life's not easy. In some respects, life is this beautiful tragedy where we all go through things in life, and sometimes, a video can sort of, obviously it's not, a song, or can just sort of interrupt what's going on in the world, and it's particularly this past year or so, it's not been easy for people. And obviously, I'm not implying that watching a YouTube video is the solution to anyone's problem, but there's people there that might struggle to get to a game, because the regulations, or just general financially as well, and your sort of vision to bring the game to people. What's it mean to you when you sort of touch someone's sort of someone's heart? It could be an expat somewhere in the world who tunes into Bolton, or it could be someone who just for whatever reason can't get to any games. What's it mean to you to know that sometimes you can sort of touch someone's heart by doing a video?
Yeah, it means so much. I'll go back to when Bolton played Swansea, and there was a young boy who I got an email from a father of a young boy who watched the channel and had said that he'd gone through quite a tough time at school, and that my videos, I think what it is what I like is when I get these emails, because this boy, he watched the channel and he loved how sort of geeky I was, if you get me, and relatable in that sense, and I like that a lot. And I remember he brought me some baked goods, some Eccles cake things and these badges, and it was brilliant, and I had a great chat with him, and I had chats with a lot of supporters at games. And when I hear the little things that make them smile, we're going, they've had a tough day, and they come in, and just a bit of humour, a bit of someone who has a familiar voice, and then being able to actually talk to them is my favourite thing. I love it so much, and I think me growing up as well, I had some sort of tough times growing up, and times in which I would come back from high school and be like, oh, and then I would go and click on a YouTube video, and it would make my day. And I think okay, it's not going to solve people's problems, but what it can do is provide a little bit of escapism and a new world. Something that I think social media is great for is you can meet people on there, and you can have chats with them, and these people share the same passions as you. So the people that watch my channel all share that one undying passion of football, and so just being able to talk to so many people, it makes me smile, because it's a bit of escapism for me as well.
Absolutely, that's really interesting point. And obviously we sort of see the other side to it. We sort of sometimes see the press around social media and its challenges, but equally in saying that, if used in a positive way, it can be a great tool for interaction. And speaking of football, week in a long time being football, for our listeners, they're aware that the shows at the moment are pre-recorded, and at the point of our discussion and when the show airs, a lot can change in football. But we look at the Premier League, and it's been fascinating, the Premier League, probably more than ever, in the sense that it's on any given week we just don't know who's going to beat who. I know you've got a passion for the Premier League, and you watch the Premier League, and you analyse the games, and you sort of delve in deeper into the performances. And what do you make of the Premier League at the moment? It's at this point anybody's, I guess. Probably the front runner being Liverpool. But what are your thoughts on the Premier League overall?
It's bonkers. Not only are we seeing someone at the top of the table, a new team, and there's so little between the teams. We're seeing. I've noticed it a lot this season. Performances haven't won games as well.
Yeah.
Games have just, I've seen performances, like for example Brighton. You look at Brighton, I think they've been fantastic this season, but they've already lost, when recording this, 6 games, and they're struggling towards the sort of bottom half of the table, but they play brilliantly. And then you look at some of the teams above them, look at Arsenal as well, and see how they're struggling, and I mean, Newcastle, who I don't think have performed very well this season, but they've had a couple of results from individual moments. Because I think a lot of it is down to energy within the team. I do think that the players in teams as well is the sort of distance, the quality is not that far. And also because we're seeing a lot more injuries and we're seeing maybe the second fiddle players at a lot of teams in games, I don't think the quality difference is that much, much of a difference. I mean, look at Southampton, for example. They've got Danny Ings up top, Vestergaard as a centre-back, and I compare that to some of the teams around them in the league, and that's not, that quality is there's not really much of a difference between them and the teams around them in terms of the quality of their strikers, and even Manchester United centre-backs and strikers. So I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's also quite annoying because when I did my predictions video at the start of the season, that is just embarrassing to look at, to be honest, because it's just not gone the way. But at the same time, it is incredibly exciting from a neutral perspective.
No, absolutely. I think it is fascinating from a neutral perspective in terms of watching the Premier League, and we can all agree that's why we love the Premier League, and it's certainly the most entertaining league in the world. For me, it's just on any given week anyone can beat anybody, and it really is great entertainment, certainly for the neutral. Certainly if you're from the fans' perspective, it can be one of them where you beat one team one week and then the following week a team that you probably expected to beat, you don't get a result. But my suspicion is that the variables that have affected people generally have probably over the past year or so, the challenges have maybe not as maybe haven't affected players in general as much, but certainly it's had an impact on them. No doubt, not having the crowd and obviously the season, the preparation, and that as well may have had an impact. But that's one thing that we sort of probably can't measure at the moment. But certainly the league at the moment is interesting, and sort of moving forward, all things being well, the Euros. We don't know what that's going to look like at the moment, or at least I don't anyway, unless anyone to the Euros wants to inform me. Do you think there's a possibility of you going to the European Championships if things sort of move forward, and I don't know what it's going to look like in terms of fans or allocation of fans, but is that something that you're going to cover, do you think?
If it's done and they find a way to do it and keep it safe, then I'll be the first one there if I can, and trying to get tickets, trying to find a way in to games. I've managed to get quite a few tickets for it last year, so it was disappointing to see it cancelled or postponed to this year, but of course it had to be done. But 100%, I'm really excited for it. I think a lot of these teams, international teams now, are doing incredibly well. Got young teams, the Spain team, France, Italy, England. There's going to be some good football, and England are in the same group as Scotland too, which will be exciting as well. And
class, yeah.
I'm not sure where they will be hosting games, or if they'll keep it at this 12 different European countries, or find one country. But either way, I'm sure they've got everyone's best interests and want to do it as safely as possible. But 100% would want to be there. And
sort of yourself, having watched the England team, you've sort of watched them live over the years, and you sort of watch them on TV. A big England fan, and many of our listeners obviously, will hope England do well. They've got, like you said, a great young team, and they've got a very good chance of, doing well. Do you think England has a chance to win the Euros? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm anxious to see how we set out. If I'm honest, I think that we've got, as you say, we've got so many talented players. However, at the same time, we look at our performance against Belgium, and it's a reality check, really, because we weren't good enough. And we don't. And I think it's about Southgate needing to find a system to get all those good players in, to fit Grealish and Foden, Sterling and Harry Kane, all these players, Jadon Sancho, got so many quality attacking players. But how do you fit all those players in and still control games and still, be able to balance the team out? Is it by doing a back three, or is a back three just taken away from quality where you can have it in other parts of the pitch? So it's about finding the right system, the right shape to get these players in, because we've got some of the best in class. For any country in Europe in position, so there's absolutely no reason why we can't stand a chance but it has to be done with the right system.
Absolutely, and I think what you mentioned there is it's not just about the first 11, it's about the squad too, and we know that there's changes in form and injury, and you've got to be able to bring in players and so on and so forth. So for sure, and it's not easy. Obviously there's other teams too you've mentioned there that are strong as well, but I think for me, looking at things, and I don't know if you agree and the listeners agree, it's probably the most open tournament there has been for a long time, because there are, like you mentioned, the Belgians, the Italies, the France, and Germany, and on any given day it's looking like anyone can beat anyone. That's Portugal as well, obviously too. And do you think it's an open tournament?
100%, because I think we've got a lot of teams that where their talent lies is in those attackers as well, which is so exciting. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams of players who are just going to be hungry and want to score goals and more goals, and so it's going to be so exciting, and a lot of really strong managers as well at these teams. Mancini with Italy, his first Euros, and of course we've got at Belgium, Roberto Martinez. We've got some really good managers too at some new managers with the team, so they'll be trying new things as well. So it's going to be very exciting. You
mentioned systems there, and which is really interesting. And some people will say that the players make the system, and some people will say that you need a good system. And obviously, who am I to tell Southgate what system he should play? And obviously, the players have sort of taken to him, and the young players, he's had the experience of sort of managing the younger teams prior to moving into the national team. But in terms of systems, if Southgate is listening somewhere, and what would you say in terms of systems, Nieve? What do you think is England's best system to play?
It depends on who they've got available as well to play. If you say it's about the whole squad, we've got a few areas where maybe we've got not weaker players, but we've got maybe not as many players, not as many options, including left back. So I think that's maybe why we've gone for 3 at the back. But, Southgate, if you're watching, I'd probably say where you need to find sort of a blend is midfield, because I think where we struggled a bit against Belgium was getting that ball into the attackers and getting that ball into those half spaces and between the lines. And, when you've got players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Harry Kane, you're going to score goals if you create chances. And so it's about sort of blending that midfield to the attack and doing it in a way that you've got quality all up and down the pitch. I think an issue with England is when they play with 3 centre-backs. If those centre-backs are Tyrone Mings, Eric Dyer, and Harry Maguire, who all have been good centre-backs this season in the league, but on the ball and that range of passing, having those 3 players in the team and on the pitch, is there a player there that actually in midfield should be playing who can link up the play and plays a bit better as well? And I think it's tough for Southgate, because we've got so many players who want to play. You've got Mason Mount as well. Who do you play? Do you play Mason Mount? You've got options like Declan Rice, you've got Jack Grealish, you've got so many options in each position. You've got Jordan Henderson, we've got loads, and he could really experiment. He's got a conundrum here because he's got a lot of players in certain positions, and then in other positions he's maybe not got as many players. So it's not easy for him to find a way to make it work.
No, that's a great point, and the word world class gets branded about, pretty. We've seen it, get branded about loosely over the years, but certainly there are world class players in the England team who have performed in the Champions League as well, and they perform week in, week out. It's just being able to sort of transfer those performances into the big stage. You've mentioned there the Kanes of this world, and you've got the Raheem Sterling, and these are players that would pretty much walk into any team in the world, all things said and done, when they're on form, that's for sure. And England's got plenty of those players, but equally there'll be other teams out there that'll be thinking the same thing about their team, and it all makes for a mouth-watering tournament. But as we sort of draw to a close, I suppose one of the questions we ask our guests on this show, your vision, and what is your vision for your channel now, Nieve? Where do you go from here?
At the moment, I want to build it as much as possible. We're on 130,000 subscribers, and I want to take it as far as possible. I think I want to really improve the content in terms of what goes into it, the research. It's something I've always done and thought highly of, is making sure you at least know what you're talking about. Your opinion might not always be shared, but one of my favourite comments is when people say, I didn't agree with everything you said, but I completely understood why you said it. Mm-hmm. So I want people to see that and see that hard work, and I'm not just turning the camera on and saying what I fancy. It's informative. I want to help people with the content who enjoy talking about the game, and just keep taking it from there. And in the future, just obviously right now it's tough with everything going on with the pandemic, but when things can restore a little bit more back to normal and fans can go to games and we can get into games, I want to be one of the first ones there and getting back on and watching football and doing what I love.
Absolutely, and no doubt we could sort of carry on this conversation. There's no limit to what we can say, and we know that we'll get you back on the show at some point again. You'll probably be somewhere in the world covering a game or a tournament. It'd be great to sort of get perspective from there as and when things we hope to normalize at some point. But at the moment, all we can do is work with what's in front of us to the best of our ability. In terms of any of our listeners, there's a lot of sports enthusiasts. Primarily a lot of our listeners are in Salford, but we get listeners from around the world, and they love their sport, and they love their football. Is there any way they can tune into the channel? Nieve, what's the details of the channel so they can tune in?
Yeah, it's Stunt Pegg, which is STUNTPEGG. That's because of a high school nickname, because my surname is Pegg. And you can get that on YouTube. I'm also on Twitter, Nieve Pegg, as well. I'm all over the place. I think if you type Bolton YouTuber, you'll see me come up a few times. Anyway, you'll see my face and a few thumbnails. Absolutely.
So we really want to thank you for coming aboard the show. It's been really fascinating insight. I know that the listeners have really enjoyed hearing you speak and your passion for the game, and we wish you all the very best success on your channel and Bolton and England at the Euros. That was Nieve Pegg's whose channel is Stunt Pegg on YouTube. She covers the games, and it's predominantly a football YouTube channel. And do check it out. Given the details there, it's really fascinating. And she's been very, very kind to join us and give us insight into the world of YouTube on 94.5 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.